Hi, I'm Ryan, and you're watching Arts for the Masses, where we bring you the latest and greatest performances and art exhibitions in Massachusetts. Musical theater, drama, dance, classical music, and jazz. I love it all. And today we dive into the world of opera. You know her. You love her, one of my favorite sopranos, and the executive director of Greater Worcester Opera Company. Let's welcome Elaine Crane. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, I first met you in the midst of the pandemic, which is still going on, and we did this great project on John Adams. And I don't even remember how we connected in the first place, but it was a lot of fun, and that was just one way that you were trying to fill this need to be artistic and creative in the midst of this. Talk a little bit about that project, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, that project was kind of near and dear to my heart because I love Abigail Adams. She's kind of my hero, and so I've read those letters between both of them for years, and always wanted to do something with it. And then during the pandemic, I realized that John and Abigail had written letters to each other when they were in isolation because of the smallpox, and it was a very correlative thing. It was really parallel to kind of what we were going through, and they talked about how much they missed each other and how worried they were about what was going to happen and how careful they were being. And then they talked about what was going on in the world with smallpox and their family and all that stuff. So I edited down those letters to the ones that had to do with their epidemic, and I have this 300-year-old house,
It's
which lends
beautiful.
itself, yeah, which was around when they were around. So, and Todd Yard, as we both know, is an amazing actor. So I thought that was a timely project at a timely, and you can see it on YouTube actually. And you did a beautiful job
Oh,
of
thank you.
filming.
Yeah.
That
And
was
then after
wonderful.
that, we worked together for that live, well, that live streaming production.
A
Oh,
gentleman's guide.
of Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. And that was
There we go.
something very ambitious and very creative, where the whole show, which was originally scheduled to be an in person live performance, was adapted just to be filmed and streamed online. And what an undertaking, keeping that whole crew of performers and crew members safe and
Hmm.
happy and organized, and you should be so proud of that production. And I think you won some awards for it too, didn't you?
We did. My husband who edited all the sound in the production because we couldn't do the singing live because this was before the vaccines. So to keep everybody safe, we pre-recorded all of the singing so that we didn't have to be spreading our aerosols everywhere. And he actually won an award from EMACT for his sound editing. And then our main actor, Taylor Lawton, also won an award for his portrayal. So that was pretty exciting. That was like a mental health project almost because it was so hard. There was, as we all know, when you're an actor and a performer and you have nothing you can do, um, it was very hard. So we had just it was this enormous creative undertaking because I couldn't rent any costumes. Everybody was closed. We had to make them. We had to make all of the Edwardian costumes and
Well, that's one of your
practice.
specialties anyway, is
I love
costume
costumes,
design. Yeah.
but I don't mind renting.
No.
So that was a big undertaking, and even I had some friends from other companies. I know a lot of costumers, right? So I would take measurements of, just say, an actress. I would get all the stuff and the pattern and her measurements and all the trim and everything, and I would drop off a box to a friend who was a costumer, and she would put it all together, and then I would go pick up the box. So there was no contact, and I picked up the box with the dress and all this stuff, and then I would do the final fitting on the actor. And
Wow.
some of that
Teamwork.
because friends who are costumers didn't have anything to do either. And when you are used to being creative all the time, it's so hard not to be creative. And so it filled a need in all of us. But even I was so happy to have just people come to my house and sing. Like we were masked and we were being careful and we were social distancing and we were always opening the barn doors and it was freezing. But there were people here. And
And
we were
just
dancing.
hearing live music, and that's
Yeah.
the joy of it for vocalists especially is there's something in your bones, and I think it's, when you're harmonizing with someone and you feel those vibrations in you, and you can't
Yeah.
replicate that over Zoom or online or in any
Yeah.
other place other than in person. So
Right.
yeah,
As a singer and as an audience member. I mean, when you're
right,
in a room with people, it's completely different, isn't it?
right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about what's going up. We have a Puccini Double Bill coming up. Is this your big return to live performances?
It is. We before the pandemic, we had done a little night music, which stopped in the middle because we got one weekend of performances, and then that's when everything went wrong. When it
Right.
all went wrong. So we had auditioned for night music and a Puccini double bill at the same time. So we had this whole thing cast, and it was a little different that time. We were doing Suor Angelica, and then we were doing one act of La Boheme. So we had that whole thing cast, and we had all the plans in place, and the directors, and blah blah blah. So then that was on hold. We were like, okay, it's on hold, and it's still on hold, and we continue to be on hold. And then it was, well, do we want to do the same thing? And so we made a slight adjustment to, we kept Suor Angelica and we kept the people who had auditioned and that we had cast. We're like, can you still sing? You still good? Because, in this, like, it was hard not to be singing and you lose skills and muscle tone and things like that. But the people who were first cast were still wanted to do it. And then we decided to switch to Gianni Schicchi as the second part of it instead of that one act of La Boheme. We did Schicchi once, like 12 years ago. It's a fabulous opera, and Suor Angelica and Gianni Schicchi and then Il Tabarro are
They're part of a
three.
trio, right? That are usually done, and people usually just pick two, whichever two that fits them the best, right?
No, it's usually Schicchi and Suor because Il Tabarro is it's a very dark, sad, horrible kind of a little thing. It's beautiful, but
Now, I haven't
it's
seen I haven't seen either of these two before, but I did read my Wikipedia, and they're a little dark as well. I mean, these are operas. They've been around for a very long time, so we don't have. But for many audiences, this might be their first time hearing these stories. I'm not sure how much we want to give away, but can you give us a little taste of what these two operas
sure.
are about?
Sure. Well, Johnny Skiki is comedy. Of course, it's a comedy
Well,
that
it
starts
seemed
with
so much
a
darker when I was
gentleman.
reading it, because I was like, oh, someone's on their deathbed and they die, but it
Yes,
is a comedy.
it's funny. It's very
Okay,
funny.
okay.
So Johnny Skiki. So there's a family member who dies, and everybody's kind of waiting, right? They're sitting vigil uh, as he dies because he's loaded. And so it's the Donati family in Florence, and they're basically like, okay, he's dead. Where's the will?
What's in it for me? What's in it for me? Show me the will.
How much am I getting?
Yep.
So they tear the place apart. They find the will, and he's given everything to the church, and they're really upset.
No, absolutely not.
And they're like, what can we do to fix this problem? So one of the family members is in love. He's a young guy, and he's in love with this young woman whose father is kind of the town shyster. Now, this story is actually from Dante's Inferno. This
Oh,
character, Johnny Schicchi, is in Dante's Inferno. And so they call him in to see if he can do something about this situation. And basically, his solution is nobody knows that this guy's dead yet, right? Because he just passed away. So he impersonates this man, has the notary come and dictates a new will. And that's all I'll say about that.
you're right.
But this opera has the most famous opera soprano aria in it, O mio babbino caro. And
Oh,
when you hear it, you go, "Oh, that's what this is from," because nobody knows. I mean, not nobody, but you don't know the opera necessarily.
and
But
you don't know the emotion behind it. To see it in context must be very different than hearing it sung at your local Italian restaurant by whoever that singing waitress is for the evening.
exactly, exactly.
Now, the other opera, Suor Angelica, is it a completely female cast?
It is.
That's pretty cool.
It is. Yes.
Now, this
It's
one's a
like
little this one's a little darker too. Or are you going to surprise me and tell me this one's a comedy too?
no,
Because
it's not a comedy. No,
no.
it's not a comedy. It's got kind of a little bit of a joyful ending, but I won't tell you what it is. So in this one, Suor Angelica, Sister Angelica, it takes place at a convent, and this woman has been placed there by her family because she had a baby out of wedlock. So during that time, 1800s, she was kind of put away, and she lives contentedly but with sadness in her heart in this convent. And so we get a little picture of the life of the nuns, and they're all singing about what they're doing and that kind of a thing. And then a visitor comes, and Sister Angelica kind of flips out because she's been waiting to hear from her family. She's been there for 7 years, and she hasn't heard a word from her family since she
Not
was
a
put
word.
there.
Wow.
Not a word. So her aunt, the princess, shows up with some news and a request, and that's, I guess, where I'll stop.
It's juicy though. It's like it.
Beautiful. Yeah, the music is just sublime, and honestly, we're there at rehearsal, right? We're at Briarwood. We're in our street clothes and everything, and we get to the end of the opera, and we're all just like crying. It's just so beautiful and moving and lovely. It's just really, and we have two different Suor Angelicas, and they're both just amazing. Like, you gotta almost come twice because they're really incredible.
I don't want to waste any time. This is the perfect time to let us know when this is running and how we can find more information and grab those tickets.
Okay, well, we are up on June 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday matinee. And you can go to our website, greaterworcesteropera.org, to get tickets.
Are you performing in both of these?
I am. I'm in Gianni Schicchi. I'm one of the family members. It's a
Okay.
big Italian family, right? And so like, "Wah!"
Tell us a little bit about the team that you've assembled. Who's directing? Who's conducting? Who's our musical director?
Richard Monroe is our stage director, and he stage directs almost everything we do. We love him. He's wonderful. And 12 years ago, or whenever that was, when we did Gianni Schicchi the first time, Richard sang the tenor role, and I sang the soprano role. So this is kind of near and dear to our hearts. So this time he's stage director. And our music director is Aldo Fabrizi, who did Gentleman's Guide with us, and he's an amazing musician himself. So we have a really awesome team of people that puts these things together.
Do you have? Is it a repertory company, or do you have many familiar performers that people get excited about seeing in shows?
We have both. We have some people who do everything, and then we have some people who come in and go out. So it's kind of nice because a lot of people like to come back because I think we really build like a family. I always say we're kind of like a hybrid between opera and community theater because we have, like, I've done a lot of community theater, so we have that sort of community theater, community family thing going, but
Right.
then we have this opera piece. But many of our performers that are doing these shows have done things with us in the past.
When sometimes people get a little scared of opera, especially if they haven't been brought up attending opera and haven't been exposed to classical music, but you do some really interesting things to make these pieces accessible. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, one of our big things is that we perform in English. So we either use a translation or we make a translation, which can take up to like 6 months to do.
And
And
you do a lot of these translations
I
yourself.
do. Yeah, I
And
do. I
you're
do.
so you're working with the raw Italian or whatever language this piece is translation, which probably doesn't make total sense sometimes,
Right.
and then you're matching English lyrics to the musical notation. What
Yeah.
a heroic feat! But
It's a huge process. So what I usually do is I'll get public domain very old libretti translations. I'll start with a couple of those and the Italian, and then I have my Nico Castell and I have my Italian dictionary, and then I need a thesaurus and a rhyming dictionary because,
you're trying to do rhymes as well.
well, like for instance, in Mozart, when I did Marriage of Figaro, where Mozart rhymes, I rhymed because I think that's part of what the composer does. Where he didn't rhyme, I didn't rhyme. Like, so those are important factors to try to stay true to and then you have, like in Italian, there might be a stress on the third syllable, and you have an American word that is on the second syllable. So then you go to your thesaurus to see if you can find a synonym that has a stress on a third syllable. And then there are vowels, right? So like if you're going on a high note, you don't want to sing like a closed E
Like
or
an E,
something.
no.
Yeah. So you get your synonym book at, your thesaurus out and try to find a synonym that works with an open vowel.
With that open ah.
It's huge. It's a huge process.
So, are these translations for these two Puccini pieces? Are these all yours, or are these?
No, we have a public domain. We started with a public domain translation, which is great because then we don't have to pay royalties on it. And then we tweaked it. We
Okay.
just we changed some words here and there, and changed some vowels and things like that. But it's mostly the public domain translation that we're using.
This is so
But
exciting.
because when you go, like they do this in Europe, right? In Germany, everything's in German, right? So you go to see whether it's musical theater or opera or whatever, it's all in German, so they can understand it, and that's part of that mystique of opera. Because if you go to the opera and you don't speak Italian, which most of us don't, you have to read the subtitles or the super titles. They'll usually put either above or below the translation. So then you're doing this, like you're like stage word, stage word, stage word, stage, and you're always reading and then looking to see what's going on. So you can't really immerse yourself in the story because you have to read the translation and then go back and forth and back and forth. And like even at the Met, it's funny because I went to see the Marriage of Figaro, and like there was a joke sung and it was funny, and then like 3 seconds later everybody laughed because then they read it. It was like, but he was already on to the next thing. So we take that element out of it, and then you just go and you can actually understand what they're singing, and it really is much more like musical theater that way. I always say it's like musical theater on steroids. Like it's got that musical theater feeling because it's in English, but then just that like really big singing.
Well, something I've noticed in your recent productions is that you do take time and care with crafting the acting and the storytelling as well. The vocals, I think, are still number one since it is opera and Greater Worcester Opera Company, but the storytelling has always been very clear in the pieces that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my acting background. I think the story is the most important thing, right? So anything that pulls you out of the story is doing a disservice. So you could have some glorious singing, and if you're doing the park and bark thing and you're standing and singing, well, it's pretty to listen to, but you could listen to that on a CD.
Right, right.
So it's the integral story that's most important.
You had mentioned Mozart, and there are so many of the big names for operatic composers. How would you describe the sort of style of Puccini, maybe in comparison to some of these others? Is it ultra romantic, or what's the flavor?
That's a great question. So Puccini, because he's a little bit more modern than those much older composers, His style is, well, it's very lush. Like the singing is very lush. His melodies are gorgeous. Like the love stuff that he writes is gorgeous. Um, the arias that are in these two little operas are just beautiful. But I will say, like in Gianni Schicchi, it's popcorn, right? It's dissonant, it's syncopated, and those things, like especially in Gianni Schicchi, like it's a family feud. So he's painting the sound of these people arguing and stressing, and it's really, really hard. Like the music is very difficult because it's all syncopation and all this like ear bending stuff, and you're really dependent on each other because like this person says this and then that person says that and then this person says, because they're fighting. And he paints that sound of what's going on. And then when the lovers sing, it's just beautiful and lush. And again, he's like really a painter with the sound of what he's doing. So I think that's a little different. Like, Mozart just, like, I won't say it sings itself because it's really hard to sing, but he just tells you where he's going, and it just makes itself known. But Puccini is just like this crazy journey that you all take together.
What sort of instrumentation and accompaniment do you have backing you up?
So that's we mostly use piano when we perform, often because it's pretty cost prohibitive. You have to get like we've done in the past. We've had like a string quartet and a piano, which can work really, really well. But like you have to have really amazing players, and it can get pretty costly to hire people who are able to do it really well. So we often will I say just, but like Olga Rogach, our pianist, is a symphony unto herself. She's amazing. And then we're going to also have an auxiliary keyboard that's going to do some of the little, like there are bells in both of the operas that kind of do important things. There are little lines of things that he's going to add to embellish the sound, but mostly it's piano. Excuse me, but Olga's incredible, so that's good.
You have some other great performances coming up. In addition to the operas, too, you do some outdoor concerts. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Sure. So, so we've always performed. Well, always for over a decade. We've been at Briarwood, and they have a wonderful little stage there, and we've done all our concert things there. And so, of course, in the last 2 years, we couldn't go to Briarwood because they needed to keep their residents really safe, and we totally understood that. So we kind of pivoted, and last year we did concerts at the bandstand in West Boylston. And even though it was kind of a concession at first because we couldn't do what we normally did, so we did something else, it turned out to be great. And we had such a wonderful time. And part of what I loved was that families and kids, and like they could all come for free and listen to the music and play around. And it's really important for kids to be able to hear really good music, but kids can't necessarily sit still and quiet for an hour and a half and that kind of attention. But they can play on the grass and listen at the same time and not have to be quiet. And like my grandkids came, which was pretty
Great.
awesome. Yeah, so we loved that. So we're going to do that again. We're going to go to the
And those
bandstand.
are a hodgepodge of all different types of music: classics, Broadway, standards, right?
They are, yeah. We're going to do 4 concerts. We're going to do the Great American Songbook. We're going to do music from the movies. And then we're going to do classic Broadway and contemporary Broadway. So 4 Wednesdays, the last 2 Wednesdays in July and the first 2 Wednesdays in August. And as we learned last year, we always need a rain date because, oh my goodness, the rainiest July ever.
Right.
What's the weather? Are we going to get rained out? One of the first concert, we did the whole sound check. And then this storm came through and got everything wet, and we couldn't plug it back in. So we couldn't do the concert.
Oh no.
So that was hard. But the other three, I think two of the three, we had to use the rain date. So we just try to, put it on social media and put it on our website if we have to pivot and change. And I actually stood there in an umbrella once, and people came, and I was like, I'm sorry, we're going to be back tomorrow night.
Oh,
But that's the charm of being outside, I guess.
that's right. Well, there's so many wonderful things that Greater Worcester Opera has coming up. It's super exciting. Where can people find that information again?
On our website, which is greaterworcesteropera.org. And I'll say one other last little thing.
Please.
Next year is our 20th anniversary. So we started in 2003, and next year we'll be 20 years old. So we have a couple of exciting things planned. Can't announce them yet. But
That's what I was going to ask, if you could reveal any of the big season announcements. No?
I think one thing I really want to do is a reunion concert. I want to have some of our, because we've been, performing for 20 years, and we've had some really incredible people come and, perform here with us. And some of them are like, we've got people who are at San Francisco Opera and in New York performing and all over the place. So it'd be really exciting to have everybody come back and do a concert. So
that sounds great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for popping on Arts for the Masses, Elaine. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of another wonderful episode. If you have a community theater group, a music group, a dance group, and you'd like to be featured on Arts for the Masses, get in touch. I'd love to schedule an interview with you. Take care.